Welcome into DNVR Buffs Postgame presented by Green Mountain Dental Group. I'm Henry Chisholm, and I am joined by Ryan Koenigsberg and Ben Gerding, and we're breaking down what happened in the Buffs basketball game tonight, where they lost 88-74 against Arizona in the first conference game of the season. Let's start off with our biggest takeaways, though. Ben, you first. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
Yeah, I think the team they really struggled in the second half, just as far as playing cohesively, playing really as a team. And obviously, they struggled in the second half. That's not really breaking any ground. They struggled. They only scored 15 points in that first 15 minutes or so. But I just thought they were pressing in a lot of different areas. They weren't playing as well as a team. That first half, up until the last 35 seconds, was as good a basketball game as I've seen this season. Tie at 44, that would have been great to go into the half. And then they had two mental miscues. They go down 50-44, and it seemed like that really just kind of shocked them coming out of that second half. So my biggest takeaway is just they were not able to overcome adversity in a lot of different ways tonight. And, that's tough to see because I've talked night in, night out about how this team has shown they can win in different ways. Tonight, it's just disappointing because you saw this team's potential in that first half. You saw they were able to keep pace with this Arizona team on the road, and they let it slip. And this just, this one just stings a little bit worse because of that.
I kind of disagree just about any negative feelings about this game. That's just called playing on the road, in my opinion. When you get a team's best shot when you're on the road, you will lose 99 times out of 100. And they got Arizona's best shot. To be honest, I feel great about the fact that Arizona came out swinging, and the Buffs stood in there and took punches and had a steel chin for 19 minutes and 30 seconds. And they were going shot for shot, bucket for bucket. McKinley Wright was in lockdown mode. And then you have one little momentum swing at the end of the half there, where McKinley misses the front end of a 1-and-1, and then they go get an and one, and then they end up getting another three to finish it. And oh man, that type of momentum swing carries over into the second half, and the Buffs could never get it back, unfortunately. But I mean, I said before the game on our bet show, I was just like, I'm not confident in this because you're just on the road at Arizona. You just don't win games like that. You have to have your best game to even have a chance. And they had their best half of the season. But, you got to do it for 40 minutes, and that's extremely difficult to do on the road. The shots stop falling, and when that happens, you lose.
Yeah. I was disappointed, I think, in this game. I did think that Colorado had a good chance of winning. And I know that there is the history with Arizona on the road. The Buffs just haven't won there. And when you see something like that, it makes you think, why would this be the time that streak finally ends? But to me, the last time Arizona played a basketball game was in the exact same gym. They played my Montana Grizzlies. I was watching, and I was fired up because Montana was in that game right up until the end. I mean, that game wound up being 70-64. And for me, as somebody who just watched Montana play Arizona to a 6-point loss, I did have pretty high expectations because it's not like that was a disappointing performance from Arizona, or maybe it was disappointing, but compared to the rest of what they've done this season, it's not that far off from what you'd expect. They struggled with another Big Sky school, Eastern Washington. And so I did come into this game thinking that Colorado was the better basketball team. And I expected maybe not to see them win, but at least to be right in it. And to see what happened in that second half, I am pretty disappointed by it.
Yeah, I just think, if Arizona is missing shots in the first half while the Buffs are making all of their shots, then we have a game. If the Buffs are still making their shots in the second half when Arizona's making their shots, Arizona made everything. I don't know what they shot against Montana, but, obviously I didn't see the game. So I don't know if I'm taking away credit from the defense that Montana played, but I'd be willing to venture a guess that Arizona missed some wide open threes in that game and, this, that, and the other thing. A lot of times shooting percentage just comes down to how well you shot that night. And it's not any deeper than that. Tonight, they just shot the lights out. The Buffs played good defense, I think, in a couple good stretches of defense. Unfortunately, there's going to be open shots out there on the floor, and it felt like Arizona made everything. You just don't win on the road when you do that. I'm with you, though. You kind of thought, okay, maybe this is the year you can catch Arizona on the road, and they're not as good as they used to be. Like, man, I don't know what was going on for them in the first half or the first, start of the season. That looks like an extremely talented basketball team to me, like it always is at Arizona.
Yeah, I really do think that that first half, I think you sent it to the group chat. You said, like, this is the best college basketball you're going to see before March. And it was. I mean, that was two teams that really did play their best on both sides. I mean, you see 50-44 at halftime and think, wow, there was no defense. But there was some really good defense. It was just that whenever anybody got any sort of separation, they knocked down the shot. And that's what good basketball is, because they had to fight hard to get the separation. They took advantage when they got it. It's just disappointing to see Colorado just change so much from the first half to the second. That inability to create the opportunities that were there in the first half, they didn't exist in the second half. And I'm not really sure why. I think, McKinley Wright had a pretty tough game, but it still felt like just for some reason, everything was congested in that second half.
Yeah. Speaking of McKinley Wright, the other big takeaway is he okay? Obviously sprain. It looked to me like he rolled his ankle late. Mm-hmm. The initial reaction was very scary. He was down for a while. But kind of when he went to the bench and was just on his own, undid his shoe, was just kind of feeling around on his ankle. Looks like a sprained ankle to me. Hopefully it's not a high sprain, obviously, and he's able to keep going. And then the other takeaway would be Evan Batty. And unfortunately it didn't carry over to the second half, but in the first half, like, that was the Evan that we know and love. And we've talked about him being up and down throughout the season, but man, that was dominant. The skill from him was as good as you'll get from Evan Batty, finishing over 7-footers with little baby hooks. Like, he had it all. But that was just like another thing that, you can't count on 14 points and a half from Evan Batty every half. Just like you can't count on Maddox Daniels to be making fadeaway threes. And when those things are happening on the road, you should be building a lead. And unfortunately it just didn't happen for them, and those things will go away eventually. Like, I promise you, all season you will not get a game where the Buffs on the road are at a 44-point pace in a half. Like, they're not going to score 88 in a road game this year.
Yeah. I think Evan Batty was the epitome of the Buffs team tonight. And the reason I say that is because first half, physical, dominant. They were felt comfortable on offense. They were moving the ball well. They were comfortable moving the ball inside. Arizona has a 7-footer, but it felt like Colorado really had that size advantage in the paint. Then you fast forward to the second half, foul trouble quick. And, the Buffs picked up 2 fouls within the first 2 minutes. Evan Batty picked up his third and fourth very quickly. And, it's just one of those things, again, when you are playing a good basketball team in their arena, your margin of error is so slim. And then and then you take into account the fact that they're shooting 52% from the floor, 48% from three. It's just so tough. Evan Batty, he has had a great steady upward progression since we've really talked about him with that down start to the year. And I think that's really positive. He's growing into his own within the offense. But it leaves you wanting more, because tonight was a night where Evan Batty took over and Dallas Walton was relatively unheard of. He had one really big dunk in the second half, and he was a beneficiary of a lot of offensive boards because the ball was popped up in the air. He's able to reach up and grab them. But you really are hoping to get one of those games where both of those guys hit 12, 14 points apiece, because then you're really establishing your dominance in the paint. And that's going to open up the perimeter, because tonight in that second half, they settled for far too many jump shots. They weren't able to work the ball inside. And that's ultimately, where the team fell apart, because they shot pretty well from three. But, when you're shooting 10% worse than the other team in their arena from the floor as a whole, it's just not going to get it done.
And this is, just one of the tough things about the way the Buffs are structured. McKinley Wright, for as amazing as he is, and he really is amazing in so many different ways, he is not an elite shot creator. And he's really good at driving the ball, and he's really good at, getting in the post against smaller or not smaller, I guess, just, weaker guards.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just need a bucket and you just need someone to do something, he's not as good as you'd like your best player to be. And it's just a minor weakness in his game where, yes, he's able to get a little bit of separation and get a jump shot off. That's just not his game. And the Buffs don't have another guy they can turn to where they can say, hey, Deshaun Schwartz, that's probably their best ability, their best second option there when it comes to hey, can you go just get us a bucket to end a run? And that's, to me, one of the bigger weaknesses on the team. Is just you don't have a guy where you can just say hey, Askia Booker, go get us a bucket. Hey, Spencer Dinwiddie, go get us a little step back J. McKinley can do it, but on a night like tonight where it's just not falling for him, the jumper, the Buffs don't know where else to look.
Yeah, and just going back to Deshaun, it's great to see him knocking down 3-pointers, but the rest of his offensive game just needs to take one more step forward. He's hitting enough of those threes that he can get himself some open jump shots inside the 3-point line, but he hasn't been able to knock those down, and that really is the next step, or finishing some of those shots at the rim. You just needed a couple of these guys to produce a little bit more. One guy who really did produce, though, especially in one 2-minute spurt maybe, was Jabari Walker. That stretch where he knocked down a couple of threes, I think it was 8 minutes and 4 possessions, or 8 points and 4 possessions, something like that. It was really impressive. Did you guys see anything about Jabari that stood out to you?
What stood out to me is he didn't play in the second half. And I don't know why. I'm looking online right now to see if anyone's tweeting what Tad had to say after the game. But I don't know what happened. I thought he was great in that stretch. And then I believe he didn't play until garbage time of the second half, not 1 minute in the second half. I might be wrong. Maybe he got a little spurt in there in the middle, but that's what I want to know. What happened? My best guess is that he got himself in the doghouse in the halftime locker room for saying something he shouldn't have. That's all I can come up with, because I thought he was really good. It's another time where we say he looked like he belonged on the floor with those guys. Just like when they were playing against Tennessee. For a freshman, he looked like he belonged on the floor with those guys, and for whatever reason, he wasn't in the second half.
Yeah, the conversation about Jabari Walker is no longer, how is this freshman going to stack up against D1 competition? It's now, why is he not competing more? I wrote a article this morning outlining questions heading into this week of conference play. Jabari Walker is 4th on the team in rebounds per game, but is 9th on the team in minutes. And it's just interesting, that dynamic of he produces, he makes the most of his minutes, he makes an impact. Tonight, it was less on the glass and more just on the offensive end, 3 for 4 shooting, including those 2 big 3-point shots. But in a game where it really felt like whoever rebounded the most was going to win, Colorado ended up losing that battle. Now, they only lost that battle by 1 rebound, and they ended up losing the game by 14. So clearly that's not the only area of improvement. However, you've got arguably your best, most talented rebounder sitting on the bench for the majority of the second half. You just have to question what it's going to take for him to kind of earn that trust. Because at this point, to go back to your point, Ryan, maybe it is. Maybe he just doesn't communicate well with the coaches. Maybe it's something where Tad Boyle doesn't have his full trust in Walker. But, at this point, he's got to really be getting more minutes, especially when the majority of the starters were all sitting at 4 fouls. This wasn't really a game where it's you're starting 5, only has 1 or 2 fouls. That second half was sloppy. He's a young kid who brings energy, and you just, you would have liked to see that. Maybe he could provide that little explosion that reduces the margin to under 10 and then is able to kind of make it more of a game.
Sorry, whoever's idea it was to use the Pac-12 network and whenever CU plays a basketball game, play a replay of a CU football game afterwards. Genius. It keeps me on every time. They just showed Nate Landman getting a sack from his belly, and it just made me sad and happy at the same time. Anyways, with Jabari, a lot of times we don't, this is one of those times, and I think this will probably fit that, where the fans or the media just don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes. And maybe Tad, had told Jabari Walker, like, I really need you to work on your help side defense. I'm just, making up something that he could have said. And we just missed it. And there was 2 lapses on help side in the first half. And Tad just told him, like, look, man, if you're not going to do that, you're not going to play, and those are that's kind of what I expected to hear from Tad Boyle after the game. Either that or, Jabari ran his mouth in the halftime locker room or something like that. And, he didn't deserve to play. I know for a fact Tad Boyle probably has a reason other than just like, oh, I forgot to put in Jabari in the second half.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get into our DraftKings King of the Game, I have a couple of shout outs that we want to get to, including our good friends over at Breckenridge Brewery. They make so many good beers. The Colorado Core is still probably my favorite right now. I haven't seen the Colorado Core in a while. And I haven't really been looking for it, and that's probably why. But that is a beer that I just haven't had in too long, and it's nice and sweet. And I guess like kind of sour too, maybe even more sour than sweet. But sweet and sour are the 2 tastes that really I handle well. Like those are the flavors that I am all about. And the Colorado Core, just incredible at both of them. Also Strawberry Sky, pretty much anything with fruit is pretty good. But then you have the, I guess the Christmas ale. We're past Christmas. You could probably still find that somewhere. Just so many good beers, good people. That's a Colorado company. So if you guys are looking for some beer, check out Breckenridge Brewery. They make all sorts of really good beers, and I cannot recommend them enough. Also, DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook is the best place for your betting needs. I wasn't ready. The ad copy isn't updated.
You use this product every single day. Just talk about it.
Well, I wasn't prepared for that. Let's see. What happened today on DraftKings? Well, I parlayed, so I lost money. I really
you played yourself.
I know. But then you're sitting there and you're thinking like, okay, I just watched Montana play Arizona so tight. And I know that the Nuggets aren't going to like go out there and just botch another game after the first couple, especially with the Rockets missing half their team anyway. And I was totally right. And I was not right about the Colorado Arizona game, which means I lost all of it, but that's just because I'm a bad bettor. Like if I had just been like a good bettor, I would have bet on both of those teams separately and would have come out even. Yep. Instead, that's not what happened. Maybe you should tell people about your betting because usually it turns out better.
Yeah, I mean, I actually did exactly what you're talking about tonight. I had the Patriots +7. I was quite wrong about that.
Yeah.
And then I had the over in the Nuggets game, and I was quite right about that. And so I ended up $2 because DraftKings Sportsbook gives you a 20% profit boost on the NBA every single day. So you go from minus juice to plus juice, and that's just one of the great offers they have. They also gave you a 100% profit boost on the Monday Night Football game tonight. Unfortunately, that was the one that I was wrong about, but still ended up a couple bucks on the night.
All right. You guys can download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Get a whole bunch of awesome deals. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700. All right. DraftKings King of the Game is Evan Batty. Probably not much of a surprise considering he's the leading scorer.
By 8, I think.
Yeah. The only starter to shoot 500 from the field. Do you mean all sorts of great stats that go along with Evan Batty. And to me, what stands out is just that he was able to finish his looks in the paint. It seems like for the first couple of weeks of this season, more often than not, the easy baskets haven't been falling for him. And now they're starting to. And also he hit a 3, which means that we can trust that he can make those when he takes them.
Yeah, I mean, he was, for a half, as good as you'll ever see him. Just completely in his bag, stretching the floor with the threes or the 3. Just, he he was awesome. Unfortunately, the foul trouble will kind of always be the underlying storyline of his career. It feels like it's tough to get the game where Evan is completely and fully locked in and also out of foul trouble. And a lot of times it's not even his fault because he's just so much bigger and stronger than everyone else out there, and people bounce off of him in awkward ways. Even, tonight he has a great box out and he gets called for it. It's frustrating. And then other times he does have silly fouls. So, but man, that first half, it's elite for a college big man.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at that stat, 2 rebounds, and you're like, well, you really expect more from your big man, but you touched on it. He was boxing out. He was a physical presence that was allowing others to crash the boards and kind of clean up that slop. That 3-pointer too, it wasn't a swish. There was a lot of luck with that. I think the broadcast crew called it a shooter's touch, which I thought is funny considering Evan Batty's not a shooter. But that just kind of was, like you said, he was in his bag. He was feeling it in that first half. He wasn't afraid to take some looks. And his shot percentage, he missed a 3-pointer in the second half that was garbage time. They were all just chucking up shots. Very efficient game from him. Really, though, again, tying it back, need him to stay on the court in that second half. If he doesn't get into foul trouble, their physicality on the inside may remain. They may be able to keep that deficit a little closer. And again, I don't think Evan Batty's foul trouble is the sole reason that they lost this game. But I think when you look at the 14-point margin, you can expect that it's going to be closer throughout the majority of that second half. And then who knows, what happens. But still, best game of Evan Batty, or from Evan Batty on the season for sure. And really came at a great time because USC is going to bring a lot of challenges in the post. You've got the Mobley brothers. Evan Mobley is just a beast, probably going to be freshman of the year in the conference. So to have Evan Batty really, come alive in this game right before that trip to LA is going to be super important.
Yeah. And I really do think that he was a big reason why everything worked offensively in the first half. I mean, he's in the post, he's getting the ball, he's just going to work down there and getting buckets out of it. And when you do that, then the defense has to start thinking about doubling, and the guys on the outside start to cheat in a little bit and try to help out just a little bit. And when you get that going, it just starts to open things up on the outside, like you said, Ben. And, not only was he making his shots in the post, he was drawing fouls too. And that was really nice to see him get to the line and just let himself get some easy points, and also put the other team's bigs in some foul trouble too. But yeah, I mean, it seems like every single game, Evan Batty is almost like fighting to get the ball in the hoop, but also fighting with the fouls. And it's 50-50 whether he's going to wind up having to sit at some point because of foul trouble.
It sucks because, you start to look forward to the NCAA tournament or the Pac-12 tournament, and you just think like, well, you just have to cross your fingers that the refs are going to let them play physical that night, or else they're probably going to lose. That is, it's not going to be the equation in all the Pac-12 games, but when you start playing really good teams, like they will, if they make it to the latter rounds of the Pac-12 tournament, or if they make it, in advance in the NCAA tournament, or even in the first round of the NCAA tournament. You just never know. Like, if the ref's going to have a ticky-tack whistle and they're going to punish Evan Batty for being big and physical, it's going to be a tough night for the Buffs. It's a tough thing to think about, because it's really, once in a while he just has a bad foul, but other times it's just like he's being physical. And he's so big that when he plays physical, there's opportunities for fouls to be called.
Yeah,
I think that's a great. Oops, sorry.
It's okay. It kind of reminds me of
StreamYard.
Yeah, to Taylor Korniak from the soccer team last year, and when she was on the podcast, I asked, like, are you kind of like worried about playing at the next level, playing pro soccer, because the players will be more physical and maybe can kind of match you? And what she said was, no. I'm just excited to be somewhere where the refs aren't going to call me just for being bigger than everybody else, because everybody else is big and strong there too. And that's kind of the situation that Evan Batty is in, where he is just bigger and stronger than whoever he's going against. And in basketball, if the ref isn't really dialed in and paying attention to all the little details, it's pretty easy to get tagged with 1 or 2 fouls a game that you don't deserve.
And I think this is an interesting point. I want to pivot a little bit then and shift away from Evan Batty and look at the opposite coin. McKinley Wright's probably the smallest guy on that court. He only shot 3 free throws tonight. And he's not going to be a guy that gets to the line a lot, and that's because he's crafty. He's able to avoid contact. But at the same time, you'd really like it if you could get some of those calls for Wright. Get him at the line, kind of slow the game down for him a little bit, pick him up some extra points. That's an area where I think is really going to be pivotal for this team. It's a great free throw shooting team, but if they're not able to balance out the foul trouble moving forward, it's going to be concerning, because right now you're about to see a stretch of basketball of opponents that you have not yet seen as a Buffs fan. Going now up against USC and UCLA, two premier programs in the conference. You got to get one win in this stretch. And I think they can. I absolutely think they can. I'm not going to turn all negative now. I'm still very high on this basketball team. But it's just now you've seen some more pitfalls of this team going against top competition. You saw how they struggled offensively against Tennessee. You saw tonight how, just the body language, they just seemed off in that second half. And you hope it's not a trend. You hope this isn't a program where, they can really beat the worst teams, the low-quality teams, but they can't beat the middle ones. Because if you're stuck in the middle of that kind of basketball purgatory, it's just going to be a tough way to keep your fans engaged once you get to tournament time.
Yeah, and I don't think that's what this team is. Now, they got to be a little bit more mentally tough than they were tonight to beat one of these next two teams. 1 out of 2 is 1 out of 3 going into this 3-game stretch, in my opinion, was something you would take in a heartbeat and just run with it. 0 for 3 isn't the end of the world. You're going to lose most of your road games in the conference. But you're gonna be fighting an uphill battle from there on out, right? You're gonna have to steal one here and there. So steal one now. Learn from tonight, where you're gonna have a rough stretch and you're gonna have to dig yourself out of it, and we'll see how it goes. Not sure, where USC and UCLA stack up against Arizona, because we haven't seen that quite yet. But I think you probably aren't going to get one of those two teams shooting the ball like Arizona shot it tonight.
Yeah. And the Buffs will play USC Thursday night at 7. That's on ESPN2. And then Saturday, they'll go to UCLA. They'll play at 6. And after that, we will be doing our next DNVR Buffs postgame for basketball. We will also be back tomorrow after the Alamo Bowl to talk about everything that happened, kind of put a bow on the season, really. And hopefully you guys will tune in then. That's going to do it for today. And I will see you guys tomorrow.